You're sleeping. It's late, barely past 4 a.m. The house is quiet, but somewhere downstairs, someone is awake, moving. A shadow glides through the darkened hallways, a door creaks open, and then the first stab. A gasp, a struggle, the sound of a body hitting the floor. Then another, and another. By the time the sun rises, 4 students are dead. But here's the part that makes no sense. 2 people in the house slept through the entire thing. No screams woke them up, no frantic footsteps, no sounds of a break-in. How is that possible? And how does a killer enter a house with 6 people inside and walk out unseen? The answer, he made a mistake, and it would take weeks before anyone realized it. They were young, they were full of life. They had their entire futures ahead of them. 6 friends, a house full of laughter, late night talks, and memories in the making. But when the sun rose on November 13, 2022, everything will be different. Because that morning, 4 of them would be dead. If you're still here, you're part of the club. Curious, thinking, and looking for answers. So why not make it official? Hit subscribe and like this video. Together, we'll uncover the stories the world tries to forget. Kaylee Goncalves, 21. The one who always spoke her mind. She was fierce, ambitious, and ready to take on the world. She was about to graduate early, move to Texas, and start a brand new life. She had a dog named Murphy, a tight-knit family, and a best friend, Madison, who was more like a sister. Madison Mogen, 21, the heart of the group. Loyal, funny, and effortlessly kind. She had been best friends with Kaylee since childhood, and they were inseparable. If you saw one, you saw the other. Even in death, their bond remained unbroken. Xana Kernodle, 20, the wild spirit. She was full of energy, always the last one to leave the party, always up for an adventure. She had an easy way of making people laugh. She had Ethan, her boyfriend, her best friend, the person she did everything with. Ethan Chapin, 20, the one everyone loved. He was a triplet, the goofy one, the protector. He didn't even live in the house. He was just visiting Xana that night, a night that should have been normal. Just another weekend spent with the people he loved. This wasn't just a college rental home. It was their safe space, a place where they could unwind after long days of classes, celebrate victories, and lean on each other like a family. The house was silent when police arrived. There were no signs of forced entry, no shattered glass, no broken locks, just 4 bodies, stabbed to death in their bedrooms. They hadn't even made it out of bed. Most were killed in their sleep. A knife, a shadow in the darkness, a massacre that took only less than an hour. And yet, 2 people survived. 2 roommates asleep in their rooms, completely untouched. They heard nothing. No screams, no struggle. 4 people murdered, 2 people left alive. Why? Did the killer not see them? Did he purposely spare them? Or was it something far more terrifying? Because one of the surviving roommates later told police she actually saw him, a tall figure, dressed in black, wearing a mask. She watched as he walked past her and disappeared into the night. She locked herself in her room. And by the time morning came, 4 of her friends were dead. For weeks, police had no suspects, no leads, no motive. The entire town was on edge. People started sleeping with their doors locked. Parents pulled their kids from school. Because if a killer could walk into a house, murder 4 people, and live without a trace, what was stopping him from doing it again? But as investigators dug deeper, they discovered something even more disturbing. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't just a man in black lurking in the shadows. This was planned. And when they finally arrested the suspect, they realized he had been watching them. Because the truth behind these murders was darker than anyone ever imagined. It started with a 911 call, a frantic voice, confusion, panic. The dispatcher tried to make sense of it. Someone was unconscious? Someone wasn't waking up? The truth was far worse. Because inside that house, 4 people were already dead. And it had taken 8 hours before anyone realized it. It was supposed to be like any other Sunday morning. Students waking up late, recovering from the weekend. But at 11:58 a.m., a call came in from 1122 King Road, the off-campus home where 6 University of Idaho students lived. The voice of the other end was hysterical. They were reporting an unconscious person. Something wasn't right. But when the first responders arrived, nothing could have prepared them for what they are about to find. The first officers pushed open the doors. Silence. No forced entry. No immediate signs of struggle. But then, the smell. It hit them like a wall. As they moved deeper into the house, they saw streaks of red. Blood everywhere. Sipping through the walls. Pulling on the floors. Then, they found the bodies. Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin. Found together in a second-floor bedroom. Blood soaked the bed. Xana had defensive wounds. She fought back. Madison Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves. Discovered in Kaylee's third-room bedroom, side by side. Their best friends in life, their bodies intertwined in death. They never even had a chance to scream. The coroner would later confirm most were killed in their sleep. But here's what didn't make sense. 2 roommates survived, untouched. They hadn't heard anything. They hadn't seen anything. 8 hours passed before police were called. The initial 911 call, it wasn't even from one of the surviving roommates. So why the delay? Was the killer still inside the house? Had they seen something, but were too scared to speak? Or was the reality even more chilling? Because one of the roommates had seen the killer. A tall figure, dressed in black, wearing a mask. She saw him standing in the hallway just a feet away. He walked past her, silent, methodical. Then he was gone. She locked her door, and in the morning, she didn't call the police. Was it shock, fear, or had she convinced herself that it was just a dream? Either way, one thing was certain. By the time help arrived, it was too late. No forced entry. The door was either left unlocked or the killer had a code. A knife, not a gun. This wasn't random. This was up close, personal. 4 people targeted, 2 people left alive. Was it intentional? Or was something else at play? The bodies. The coroner found signs that some victims were stabbed more brutally than others. Did the killer have a target? Or was this an obsession gone too far? For weeks, police were left with more questions than answers. The town of Moscow, Idaho, was in a state of terror. Who did this? Why? And how had they walked away without leaving a trace? But the most terrifying thing is that the killer had gotten away once. What was stopping him from doing it again? The crime was brutal. The town was terrified. And the police, they had no idea who did it. This wasn't a break-in gone wrong. It wasn't a random attack. Whoever did this wanted them dead. But there was something off. No forced entry, no screams loud enough to wake the entire house. 4 people murdered in their sleep, while 2 roommates survived, untouched. Had the killer known them? Had they let him in? Or was this something else entirely? At first, police thought they were dealing with a crime of passion, the brutality, the overkill. Someone wanted the students gone. They looked at friends, ex-boyfriends, party-goers from the night before. They even entertained rumors that one of the victims had a stalker. But there was no evidence, no angry texts, no jealous partners with shaky alibis, nothing. And as detectives searched for a lead, the reality started kicking in. The deeper they looked, the stranger it got. No forced entry. The door was either left unlocked or the killer had a code. The timing. The attacks happened between 4 a.m. to 4:25 a.m. By 5 a.m., the house was silent again. The surviving roommates. They weren't just untouched. One of them saw him. A tall man dressed in black, wearing a mask. But here's the part that made no sense. She didn't call 911. Not at 4 a.m., not at 5 a.m. Not even when she locked her door and hid. The call didn't come until early noon. Why? Was she in shock? Or had she convinced herself that what she saw wasn't real? The night before, everything seemed normal. Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogen were at the corner club until 1:30 a.m. They grabbed late-night food from a food truck at 1:40 a.m. Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin were at the Sigma Chi party. They got home around 1:45 a.m. At 2:52 a.m., Kaylee called her ex-boyfriend multiple times. At 4 a.m., everyone was home, asleep. By 4:25 a.m., 4 of them were dead. And by 9 a.m., the roommates were awake. But still, no one called the police until 11:58 a.m. Detectives were lost. The case was ice cold until someone checked the surveillance cameras. At 3:29 a.m., a white Hyundai Elantra was seen near the crime scene. At 4:04 a.m., it circled the house. At 4:20 a.m., it sped away. The driver, unidentified. But then came the real mistake. A knife sheath left behind. And when they tested the DNA, it didn't belong to any of the victims. It belonged to someone else. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. For weeks, detectives had been asking who could have done this. Now, they had a new question. Who the hell is Bryan Kohberger? The case didn't make sense. 4 students murdered in their sleep. No signs of forced entry. No obvious motive. And a killer who seemed to vanish into thin air. From the beginning, everyone had a theory. Some believed it was a crime of passion. Others suspected a planned, targeted attack. But the deeper the investigators looked, the more unsettling it became. If this was just a random killing, then why did it feel so personal? Theory number 1, a stalker's obsession. One of the victims, Kaylee Goncalves, had told friends she was worried about a stalker. She felt like someone had been following her, watching her, but when police investigated, they couldn't confirm anything. Was she being paranoid, or was someone really lurking in the shadows? Kaylee made multiple late-night calls to her ex-boyfriend just hours before the murders. Was she scared? Had she seen something? Some believe the killer wasn't there for all 4 victims, that one of them was the real target. But if that's true, why didn't the killer go after just Kaylee? And if this was an obsessed stalker, how did he get inside? Theory number 2, a crime of passion. The scene was violent. Overkill. Whoever did this wasn't just trying to kill, they were furious. Could this have been a jealous ex? A love triangle gone wrong? Kaylee had recently broken up with her boyfriend. Was he upset? Had she rejected someone else? Xana and Ethan were a couple. What if one of them had a secret enemy? But here's where the theory starts falling apart. There was no sign of a struggle before the attack. No defensive wounds that suggested the killer was someone they knew. And no text, no fights, no warning signs. So if this was a crime of passion, why was there nothing leading up to it? Theory number 3, the random killer theory. Some believe this was a random act of violence. A stranger, a drifter, someone who broke in, killed 4 people and disappeared. It's terrifying to think about it. Did the killer just get lucky and find an unlocked door? The knife sheath left behind. If this was a seasoned killer, why would they forget something so crucial? The white Hyundai Elantra. It had no connection to the victims, but it was seen circling the area before and after the murders. Was this really a random break-in? Or was someone stalking the house for days? At first, None of the theories made sense until police discovered one piece of DNA evidence, a knife sheath left behind with DNA that matched Bryan Kohberger, and suddenly a new question emerged. Who was Bryan Kohberger? And more importantly, why these victims? For weeks, the community of Moscow, Idaho lived in fear. A quadruple murder. No suspect. No murder weapon. No clear motive. Investigators scoured thousands of leads. Forensic analysts worked tirelessly and pressure mounted. Then, on December 30, 2022, an arrest shocked the nation. Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old Ph.D. criminology student from Washington State University, was taken into custody. His white Hyundai Elantra, spotted near the crime scene, had raised suspicion. DNA from a knife sheath left at the murder scene provided the break detectives needed. A family genealogy match led them straight to Kohberger. He had returned to his parents' home in Pennsylvania for the holidays, where authorities tracked his every move before making the arrest. The evidence against Kohberger seemed overwhelming. A DNA match on the knife sheath, surveillance footage placing his car near the scene, and cell phone data showing suspicious movements before and after the murders. But his defense team quickly went on the attack, challenging the reliability of DNA forensics, questioning police procedure, and claiming their client was being railroaded by circumstantial evidence. His alibi? A late-night drive, alone, with no witnesses. His attorneys argued that this was routine for Kohberger, that he had a habit of driving in the early morning hours. But investigators pointed to the chilling fact that his phone had been turned off during the crucial window of time when the murders occurred. As the case moved through the pre-trial hearings, prosecutors made a bold announcement. They would be seeking the death penalty. Kohberger's defense countered with a motion to remove capital punishment from the table, arguing the state's execution methods were cruel and unusual punishment. That motion was denied. As of 2025, Kohberger remains in custody, awaiting trial. His legal teams continues to fight, delaying proceedings and demanding further forensic testing. The court has set August 11, 2025 as the start of the trial, a trial expected to last 3 months. For the families of the victims, justice feels agonizingly slow. The horror of that November night still lingers, and until Kohberger is either convinced or acquitted, closure remains out of reach. Despite the mountain of evidence, some aspect of the case continue to spark debate. What was Kohberger's true motive? Was he obsessed with criminology and testing his own knowledge? Did he know that victims personally, or was this a random attack? How did he gain entry without walking the other 2 roommates? Why did they survive? Did Kohberger act alone? Or is there something more to the story? Could there still be evidence that hasn't been uncovered? Even with an arrest and a trial on the horizon, the full truth of what happened that night may never be known. They were more than victims. They were daughters, a son, best friend, students with dreams that would never be fulfilled. Their names, Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, are now forever linked to a nightmare, a case that shook a quiet college town to its core. For their families, the world stopped on November 13, 2022. One moment, they were sending texts, making plans for the future. The next, their lives were shattered by a crime so brutal, it felt almost impossible to comprehend. There is no way to erase the horror of what happened inside that house. The grief is relentless. Kaylee's father, Steve, described it best. It's like a black hole, and you wake up every morning and fall into it. The trial is set. The prosecution is pushing for the death penalty. But even if a conviction is secured, Will it ever be enough? Will it bring back the laughter, the friendships, the futures that were stolen? And the chilling question that lingers, why them? Was this truly random, or did the victims unknowingly cross paths with the darkness waiting to strike? For the people of Moscow, Idaho, the scars of this case will never fade. And for those left behind, there is no such thing as closure, only the haunting reality that justice, no matter how swift, will never bring them back. Subscribe to Case Solvers Club for more cases like this. We investigate, we analyze, and we uncover the truth, one case at a time.